Hello, and welcome back to Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby, where we will continue our journey with Uncle Wiggily. Story 5: Wiggly and the Fire. What do you think, Mama? Cried Sammy Littletail, the rabbit boy, as he came running in the house after school one fine day. Oh, what do you think? Why? I'm sure I don't know, Sammy, my dear, said Mrs. Littletail, smiling at him. I think of a great many things, of course. Oh, he means what do you think teacher told us? Cried Sammy's sister Susie, as she came in more slowly, for girl rabbits cannot run quite as fast as rabbit boys. Did your teacher say you're a good little animal children today? And that you had your lessons well? Mrs. Littletail wanted to know. Well, she did say that, spoke Sammy, sort of bashful like and shy. But I think you can't guess what I mean. She said we ought to make a little garden, each for ourselves, and grow things to eat in it. The one who has the best garden will get a prize. And I'm going to have a garden and raise lettuce, cried Susie. And I'm going to have one and plant carrots. And I'm going to give Uncle Wiggily some, added Sammy. It will be very nice for each of you to make a garden, said the rabbit children's mama. You may each have a little part of our big garden for yourselves. And we're going to do all the work too, explained Sammy. We must clear off the ground, spade it up, rake it smooth, put the seeds in, and water them when they come up. Oh, of course, if it's your garden, you must look after it yourselves, said Mrs. Littletail. So, Sammy and Susie began to make their garden. First, they raked away the brush, sticks, and leaves from the ground that was to be dug up. This brush they piled up in a big heap in a large garden. That pile of brush does not look very nice there, said their mama. Oh, we're going to burn it when we get through, said Sammy. Teacher said we were to burn up all the trash and rubbish, for the ashes were good to mix in with the garden dirt. I don't know why, but ashes make the ground better. Yes, agreed Mrs. Littletail, but you'd better let your papa burn the brush. He will have more brush when he rakes up the ground for his garden. Animal or real children should not play with fire, said the mama rabbit. So, Sammy and Susie Littletail went on making their garden, and in it they planted cabbage, radishes, lettuce, and carrots, all things that rabbits love to eat. A few days later, their papa, Mr. Littletail, a rabbit gentleman, made his garden, and he raked up a big pile of brush. When the garden was all nice and smooth, Mr. Littletail said, "Now I will burn that brush." "May we watch you?" asked Sammy. "Yes, if you do not come too close," his papa said. Mr. Littletail set fire to the big pile of dried brush, sticks, and leaves, and my goodness me sakes alive and some peanut pancakes. How it did blaze up. It crackled like the 4th of July, and the heat was so great that Mr. Littletail had to jump back very quickly. "Oh, what a fine fire!" cried Susie. "We could roast potatoes in it if it weren't so large," spoke Sammy. "But it is too hot now." "Indeed it is," his father said. "Keep back." Hotter and hotter grew the brush fire. The blaze leaped up, and then everyone had to run far away. The fire grew so hot that the Littletail house began to smoke and scorch. "Oh, our house will catch on fire from the brush!" cried Sammy. Yes, I'm afraid it will, exclaimed Mr. Littletail. I must get some pails of water and throw on the brush fire. But by this time, the fire was so hot that when Mr. Littletail had the water, he could not get near enough to toss it on the blaze. Oh, what shall we do? Cried his wife. Our house will burn down. Oh, I must save what I can. So she threw the clock and a lot of her best dishes out the window, and they were broken, I'm sorry to say. Then Mrs. Littletail carefully carried out the feather bed. You see, she was so excited that she did things backwards. She should have thrown the feather bed out the window, for that would not break. And she ought to have carried the clock and dishes down the stairs in her apron. Hotter and hotter grew the fire, and the rabbit house was beginning to smoke and blaze. "Call out the water bug fire department!" shouted Grandfather Goosey Gander, but the water bug had gone away to an excursion and could not come. "Oh, my lovely house will burn!" cried Mrs. Littletail. "No, I know how to save it," shouted Sammy. "I'll go get Uncle Wiggily Longears in his airship. We can go up in the air over the fire and spill a pail of water on it. He won't be burned as he will be so he won't be burned as he will be so high up, but the water will put out the fire." "Go and grab him quickly then," shouted Mr. Littletail, hopping up and down on his big ears. Uncle Wiggily came sailing along in his airship right away when Sammy called him. The rabbit gentleman took up with him many pails of water, and when he had steered his airship high up over the fire, where he was out of danger, Uncle Wiggily spilled down the water, just like rain from the clouds, and the fire hissed like a snake and went out. Ours was all burned up, of course, and the Littletail house was scorched on the roof, but not very much. Wiggily had put it out just in time. "But if it hadn't been for an airship, I don't know what we'd have done," cried Mr. Littletail. "Thank you so much." "Pray do not mention it," said Uncle Wiggily politely, as he wagged his tail up and down as well as sideways. Then the rabbit gentleman helped pick up the broken dishes, and he mended the broken clock, and all was well. And Mr. Littletail did not make such a big brush fire again. And on the next page, if the carpenter man doesn't take our bathtub away to slide his little puppy dog downhill in, I'll tell you about Uncle Wiggily and Dr. Possum. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Bedtime Stories with Vice Vice Baby. I hope you all have a good night and sweet dreams.